So welcome to Bistro Lights Live, eventlightsusa.com, Sheehan Professional Services, LLC. Will be hosting this video to cover bistro lighting. The reason I decided to do this as my first video is that right now, I'd say about half the calls I'm getting are for bistro lighting. It seems to be a very hot trend in 2021. But there's a lot of information that people need to get to understand what goes into it, why it costs what it costs, the logistics, making smart decisions from the onset about integrating lighting into their event. And I'm going to pull up some slides here to go over, and we will discuss number one, professional grade bistro lighting. What is professional grade bistro lighting? Well, I'm glad you asked. Professional grade bistro lighting is low power consumption. It's able to handle long runs, and by long runs, I mean 350 feet of it at a time. It's dimmable so that you can set different tones for the event. It's lightweight, which is vital, and it is seamless. And I'm going to go over each of these, and we're going to talk about what constitutes long runs, dimmable, lightweight, and seamless. Low power consumption means that on a 350-foot run, you are going under 20 amps. That's about one socket. Say like a 40 by 80 tent or a 40 by 80 area period is going to, if you do an X pattern on that, you're going to be hitting around 450 feet. So you're going to need at least two 20 amp circuits. Low power consumption in the modern day is LED. A lot of these lights, like the ones you see behind me here, those are LED. They are rapidly replacing incandescent bulbs, which usually run about a watt a piece. These are a fraction of a watt a piece. And long runs isn't just the fact that it can handle the 350 feet. It's also making sure that you have a professional grade bistro light that doesn't taper off in intensity the further down you go. There are some of the cheaper ones out there that do that. Also, the ones you get like from Home Depot and Costco and places like that, you put too many feet of those together and they will trip a circuit. They're not really designed for large size events. The dimmable is very important as well. If we're hired, for instance, to go out and just do a set and forget, we'll put the lights up, come back and collect them after the event's over. We don't really dim them. We just leave them full force. But you kind of lose some control over the event when you do that. For instance, the lights you see here, I can change the intensities. In fact, I got the bulb right here. We'll get a little closer. And you can see that I can set different moods. All right, so depending on the time of day it is, depending on the mood you're trying to set at any given point in the event, you will want a technician on site to dim these. Lightweight is vital. I've done jobs where we have used the older style, very thick cables, large bulbs, and it can add up to over 100 pounds hanging from rafters, various hang points, and you can see that the bistro lights throughout the night start to sag under the weight. They heat up, and it starts getting lower and lower onto people's heads. They also have the potential of pulling things over that they're attached to, meaning that when we use like stands for them, we have to use a lot of sandbags. Those extra sandbags are going to cost the client more money. And I'll get into a little bit about the type of equipment that's used to make a bistro light event happen further in this discussion. but lightweight allows you to reduce the amount of things like sandbags and heavy counterweights and things like that. So that's something that you want to take into consideration, is that professional grade Bistro Light should be lightweight. Seamless is something else that we want to talk about. A lot of the companies that you can go to, like Home Depot and Costco, and buy the over-the-counter stuff, besides the fact that they're very heavy, the fact that if you run them too long, they will lose intensity further down the run, possibly tripping circuits at a certain point. One thing you want to think about is on the part that you plug into the socket, you'll get like a 3-4 foot length before you get to your first bulb, and then every other bulb between the bulbs is like a foot. Well, if you have to connect two of those cables together, you're going to have a section that is literally got a 3 foot gap in it between bulbs. Now this guy right here, if you can see this, there's a foot between these two bulbs. This piece is 6 inches. The opposite end is 6 inches. If I connect these, they make a foot. You will never know that there is a connection between the bulbs. It's seamless. It looks uniform throughout the event. And there's very few companies out there that make that. And so a professional lighting company like ours has done a lot of research. We've invested in that type of equipment so that you will never have to worry about having gaps in the lighting. So that's very important. Let's see, we're going to choose a different asset. And we're going to move on to practical or accent. So what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this bistro lighting? And by the way, bistro lighting is also referred to as string lighting, cafe lighting, market lighting. So if a client comes to you, or if you are a client that is listening to this, it goes by multiple names. But the real question here is, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to accent your event just to give it a hint or a feel, like a romance mixed with other types of lighting? Or is the bistro lighting going to be the practical lighting for your event? In other words, is it going to be lighting the tables where people are eating? Is it going to light the dance floor area? There are a number of considerations that you have to think about with that. And, for instance, let's say you have a dance floor and you got this cross pattern, in the middle of your space. You need to talk to the lighting company up front, and they need to have a discussion with who's putting the dance floor in and designing the event so that the dance floor is squarely in position so that it's over where there's a big X, so that the dance floor is properly and uniformly lit. So it's vital to have the lighting company talking to the other vendors for placement. And we will be mapping your lighting for you and with you. So part of we do a lighting design. We actually map it out. There's a schematic that will show you exactly where it goes and how it works. So that is important for you to consider when you're doing bistro lighting, or any type of lighting, but particularly with bistro lighting, because you can't move these lights once they're in place. Now, when we talk about a hint of romance looks, if you're trying to save cost because you're doing like a big picture kind of thing, you can do a Z pattern back and forth. So it kind of gives that feel. If you're doing the, practical lighting, you want to kind of go with an X pattern, or you want to go with long runs that run up and down the space so that they're directly over tables. So people can, when they're eating, you don't have one guest sitting in darkness and you have another guest that's, got a hot spot on them. So that's something to think about. All right. So let's talk a little bit about placement of the bistro lights. Are you going to be putting these indoor or outdoor or in a tent? There are some considerations that have to be made for each of these. We hang these lights in multiple ways, depending upon where the event is taking place. We have what are called pre-existing hang points. This is a venue that is used to having this type of lighting all the time. They have a standard layout, and there are already like these eye holes up in the ceiling that we can just go up and connect to really quickly and get this stuff up in the air. A lot of times we run into venues that don't have pre-existing hang points. In fact, the vast majority of them do not. And you'll go into some venues and they don't even want bistro lighting because they'll have wooden beams or some type of permanent fixture you have to attach it to, and they don't want zip ties chewing up the woodwork or the pre-existing structure. Well, we actually have these little mounts, and these mounts have straps, and they're designed to attach to various fixtures, and we can hang the bistro lights directly from this to create the patterns, and we can hang these at different heights. We can even attach magnetic pin spot lights for floral arrangements and other types of things on these as well. They're multi-purpose. And that's something to consider, where a venue may have already said, no, we don't allow bistro lighting because we've had people come in here and they're drilling into our woodwork, or they're scratching up the paint on our steel beams or whatever. We can talk to them for you and maybe go out and do a sample for them and make sure that they're okay with this, so that can get you what you want. So then we get into the next type of hanging bistro lights, and that's with what's called pipe and base. I'm going to pull up a picture here. And on the pipe and base, this is a steel base, which you're looking at. That thing weighs about 50 pounds. And we put steel pipe in that. We screw it in, and then that goes up at varying degrees of height. We can do like a 10 foot is usually the minimum. We can go high up to 14. We put a sandbag on it and we hang the bistro lights from the top of that. Where does this come in of value? Okay, this comes in value to you when you have a space that has no pre-existing hang points. It doesn't have anywhere for us to attach our brackets to. Pavilions outside, they're just empty spaces. If you're in a large ballroom and you want bistro lighting inside the ballroom, this is something that could very well become an option for you. Again, you need to talk to the lighting company up front. We need to go out and survey the property, because you don't want us putting a 14-foot lighting tree in a space that has a 10-foot ceiling. Because guess what? That day that we go out there to do that, you're not going to have your bistro lighting because you're 4 feet higher than the ceiling. You can't erect them. So that's something that, again, you want to talk to us and really plan out. Now we're going to take a look at the last option of how we go about hanging bistro lights. What you're seeing here is called a truss tower. That's a picture of a truss tower. And this has extra lights in it. Sometimes they're just aluminum going up with no light in them. Sometimes we can put like a cloth translucent sock over it and light it, with a nice warm amber glow inside. And in this picture where you see the blue is where we would connect the bistro lights, so they're hanging over everyone's heads. And I'll show you another picture right here. So in this one, we're looking, that's kind of what it looks like with the translucent sock over it. And you would just attach the bistro lights to the top of that. So that is something to look at. So you kind of are getting a picture now, I hope, that this type of lighting can vary greatly in how it is achieved. We have the ability to do this in almost any space, depending upon the client's needs and their budget. You probably have also gathered that as I covered that, it was going from less expensive to more expensive. And I'll cover that in a little bit as to how we arrive at that. So let's talk about designing your layout. That's going to usually start, unless I've been in that venue multiple times and I'm familiar with every space in that venue and what the height is. And as I do go in, I mark that down for future events. We offer free walkthroughs. You're not obligated to use us. If you want us to go through and just look a space through with you and discuss options with you, we do that. You definitely need to start there. And that needs to happen very early, because that may actually affect the venue that you choose. If you're insistent you want bistro lighting look, then you need to look at a space that is friendly for that. If that is not a concern, that's something you want to weigh as well. Mapping and placement is also big. Come the day of the event, you're going to want to make sure that the look that you thought you were getting actually happens. And the way that happens is we put it down on paper. Any professional lighting design company out there should be able to discuss with you the look, to reach some type of a consensus of what that is. And we can also start to figure out logistical problems in that process to make sure they don't become an issue. You don't want to spend $1,500 or $2,000 to only then find out that on the day of your event that there are logistical problems to having your vision. We had a poor connection there, but now we're back. And we will map those out on your design layout so that there's no question that we know where the power is. We have approval from the property to pull power from a particular socket. If there is no power, we come up with a plan to ensure that your event is powered. The Z versus X patterns that I was talking about earlier is something that we work through with you as well, depending on whether you want the accent lighting, whether you want practical lighting, whether you want comprehensive all-around package lighting. That's something to think about. The amount of lights is very important. It is not uncommon to run through 250 feet of bistro lighting very quickly on an average event. The most I've done so far is, I think, like 500 feet. So I have a hard time believing I could do more, but it's very possible. So that is something that we also have to take into consideration. You don't want to just rent lighting from someone and they show up the day of and they run out of lighting. The designing process should help eliminate that. I go in with a laser rangefinder. I'm mapping this out. I can aim at different points, map out just how much lighting that I need. Do not put yourself in a position where you have a vision that doesn't happen because the person that's designing your lighting did not calculate the proper lengths. I've seen that happen. So we're going to move on to installation. I believe it's installation. Let me take a look here real quick. Nope, we're going to take a look at this map. So this is, I don't know how well you all can see this on your cell phones or iPads, but what you're looking at here is a map of bistro lighting. The little blue spots are the AC power. The little blue lines are the AC power cable. The red lines are actually the bistro lights. You should, if you're dealing with a professional lighting design company, have something that looks like this so that you can go in and lay out where your tables are going to be on this map. You should be able to literally go down there and, put where the DJ is going to be and where the dance floor is going to be. Build that event, get it looking tight, really nice on paper before it happens. Right. Now we're going to go to installation. So what is a lighting design company going to do with bistro lighting? Pretty much any lighting, but bistro lighting in particular, because there's a lot of logistics that go into this the day of the event. We need to arrive early. And that means that either you as the client or you as an event planner need to be aware of that. And we need to make sure that the venue will give us access. Some venues will say, no, you only get 2 hours to set up. If we run into that situation, that means I have to put on twice the amount of crew. I literally have to go in and have one crew build those lighting trees, the other crew going right behind them, putting up the bistro lights as they're erecting those trees. That's something to think about, is, why you need to be talking to us and to the venue, because what we want to do is we want to be out of the way with those ladders and with those lights being strung across the floors as we're raising them, as your caterers are coming in and putting up tables and putting chairs in place and glasses out on tables. We don't want to be in their way. We want to be seamless in our integration with them. Now, typically towards the end, like let's say that we normally do a 4-hour setup. 250 feet of bistro light, maybe 450. You're looking at between 3, max 4 hours. If we're 95% done, when they're coming through and setting up the tables, we want to have one end of the space done. They come in behind us. We stay ahead of them. So that's something to think about. It's important to understand what is going on in the space at any given time with the lighting company and who else they're interacting with. The complexity of the job, that Z pattern versus the X pattern, it requires more work to do an X than a Z. You're doing twice the amount of work. If you're doing strange spirals, if you're doing like something where you're going way up in the tent and you're doing like up in the tent in the center and running down the lengths, that is a much more complicated job than, say, these two gentlemen that I'm going to show you right here. These guys are setting up bistro lights, and they're setting those up at about 11 feet in the air. So you can already see we've got a complex situation. We have two human beings up there on a ladder. They're hanging bistro lights. Actually, I think they're hanging the brackets to do the bistro lights with right there. So they actually have to do the brackets, then come back and do the bistro lights. So that's a complex situation. But as you can see, right above their heads, there's that beam. And that thing runs, I think, 23, 24 feet in the air up towards the center. Some people want that center beam up there, and they want it run down the length to where these guys are. That's a much more complex situation. And in that type of a situation, we have to bring specialized ladders out. And that means we have to bring a special truck. So your cost is going to go up because it's becoming more complex. So that X and Z pattern, right around 11 feet high, 10 feet high. You put a little swag in the bistro lights right in the middle where they meet. That gets you down to about 9-8 feet in the middle. That's pretty straightforward, and it looks great, and it's low enough to people's heads that it illuminates the table, illuminates the dance floor. And effectively what happens in that situation is that, with that dimming, you can really set the events throughout the night. Let me get a couple pictures up here. So here we have a dance floor. And I don't know if you can see, like in the back, they also have that dance floor is lit with some stage lights to kind of light it more of an amber. But you have your bistro lightings that's kind of above people's heads. And then you have your uplighting and ceiling washes in there. So that is right about 11 feet where those tack points are. And then it hangs down to probably about 8 feet. It may be a little less, like 9 feet. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And we'll take another quick peek. I'd like to show you a couple videos real quick. So here I am on top of a ladder, and you can see I'm like above everything. You kind of get a 360 view of this bistro lighting. And I think anybody watching this can kind of tell this took a lot of work This was not something that was done, in an hour or two. It took 3 people about almost 3.5 hours to do that. And we got another video here where it's from down below, and we're walking through the space, and you can see that these things are perfectly crisscrossed. They're hung at exact uniform from ground to height level. We actually measure that stuff. We make sure that your experience is tight, that it looks fantastic. And that's one of those things that you get from a professional lighting company with professional grade lighting, bistro lighting. Not all bistro lighting is equal. The big clunky stuff from Costco and stuff like that is not going to pull that off. Here's a great shot of the bistro lighting with uplighting and ceiling wash. So this is where you can take your bistro lighting to the next level. Some people just want the bistro lighting, and it's great. It looks great. No problem with it. It's a classic look. It's hot right now, but there's no reason you can't mix it with other fantastic looks. And we're going to take another pic. Here's a walkthrough. Oh, sorry about the music. I'll make this short. But, hey, you're going to love. Somebody loved it. And that's the barn at Willowbrook, by the way. And you can see that the bistro lighting with amber uplighting is really gorgeous. Just makes that place glow. So we're going to stop that share. And we're going to move on to special considerations. Okay, heights is a big one. The higher we have to climb, the more complex it gets. The more complex it gets, the more expensive it gets. We have to bring in lifts. The powered lift is extraordinarily expensive. I had a client once that wanted us to go, it was like 40 feet up in the air. And when we told them the price of a power lift to do that, they were like, no, thank you. We need a plan B. We can do it. We have people on call that are professionally licensed to operate lifts should a client ever want that and is willing, to pay for it. The average ladder height that we try to stick to is not going above 14 feet in the air, but we can go higher. We just need to plan that with you in advance. Fast turnarounds. I kind of already covered that a little bit. There are some venues, they're just so inflexible. They'll say, well, the other thing is they'll say, yeah, you can come in early, but we're going to charge you an extra $300. And you do need to consider that as a possibility. If, for instance, I have 2 people and they're on for 4 hours, that's already covered. They're going to get a 4-hour rate no matter what. That's our minimum. But they're only allowed in there for 2 hours, and then I have to double up the team. It may be cheaper for you to pay the extra time on the venue than me to bring in 2 extra people. So that's something we can talk about and work through. So that's something you want to give consideration for. Now we get into fees for trucks. Okay, when we go back and we look at those pre-existing hang points, we look at the special mounting brackets. Those are things that I have readily on hand. When we start getting into lighting trees with those 50-pound steel bases and the truss, that is the type of equipment I have to have a special panel truck bring out, like a 12-foot or 16-foot panel truck. Now you think about it. You have, say you have 8 lighting trees, and those are 50-pound bases. That's 400 pounds of steel bases. Now I got to have another 50 pounds per tree worth of sand at the base. All right. And then you got to have the steel pipe itself. You're getting up to like almost 1,000 pounds of equipment. You have to have the bodies to lift it, to assemble it, but you have to have a truck to carry it. And that often means a truck that also has a power lift gate that goes up and down so that it allows you to get that equipment off easily and transport it onto the site. So that is going to cost more in each level, pre-existing hang points, mounting brackets, pipe and base, and truss. In that order, they get more expensive. Once you start going into pipe and base and truss, you're looking at some type of freight charge on top of that as well. So this is why I say if in the earliest stages of planning your event, you want to look at the venue space and see, do they have pre-existing hang points? Do they have a structure that is friendly to hanging mounting brackets? That could save you a tremendous amount of money when you're planning on doing your bistro lighting. There's no question about that. So that's something to give, a real thought process to and work with your lighting company. All right, so now we're going to go to pricing. Okay, we're going to break down the pricing that goes into bistro lighting. There's the cost of the lights themselves. That is relatively inexpensive. If you're telling me you need 250 feet of bistro lights, you're looking around, 88 cents a foot. That, you're talking maybe, $230 or so. You're thinking, great, I'm going to get bistro lighting for $230. No, that's the cost for the lights. Now we got the labor that goes into that, okay? Are you going to have the set and forget where we have them on full bright, like right here? Okay, they're on full bright, and we walk away from it. And we come back and we pick them up, okay? I can have a lead and a what we call a GAV, a general AV technician, set that up. Typically 2 people for most jobs. And then they'll come collect it after. So that's a labor cost. The lead gets paid more, the tech a little less. If you want the tech to stay on site, which I highly recommend if you're going to be doing things like dimming for dinner and dance and setting different looks and feels throughout the night, you're going to have that cost incorporated. And honestly, I think it's only like a few hundred extra dollars. So if that is something that isn't a budget, I highly recommend it. It's something that you can't go wrong on if you need an adjustment. If the job gets really complex, or if it's a really big job, I'll be putting on 3 and 4 people. If we're doing that thing where the venue has a hard out, I have a job coming up in the near future. They're giving us 1 hour to get out of the space. I actually have to put more people on for that job to take the stuff down than I do putting it up, because we literally have an hour to get out. That's a rarity. Usually your crew is about 2/3 the size, maybe half the size on a breakdown as it is a setup. There's no reason, especially for a bistro job, that you should normally be getting a company charging you the exact same amount for a takedown as a setup, unless there's a special circumstances, like I've just explained. So then we get into the support, okay? The support costs for those lights are calculated into the pricing, right? Going from the bracket, pre-existing hang points, to a mounting bracket, to the steel pipe and base, to the truss. There are things like zip ties that are expendables. There's electrical tape. There's additional extension cord. If I have to run 150 feet of extension cord to a power supply somewhere, that extension cord has to have the level of quality where the power does not drop off after 150 feet. That's not something you're just going to walk in, to a Walmart and buy. So we bring specialized extension cord that can handle those loads. There are tools that go along with this, ladders that, we know that they're telescopic ladders. They all have to be transported out to the site. There is the cost of transportation. It can be as simple as my personal vehicle or a small, little truck. If it is pre-existing brackets, if we get into the truss, into the pipe and base, then we're getting into having to have a freight vehicle bring it out. So that's how the costs are. So you're asking me probably right now, yeah, okay, but how much does that cost? It really depends. It really depends on your venue. I'll give you some numbers here in a second, but it really depends on your venue. It really depends on how much time we have to set up, how complex you want it. Are you going to mix this with other forms of lighting? The cheapest that I probably would do, some type of a small bistro lighting setup, realistically, and this is pretty much in the area, is like $1,200. More commonly, you're looking at $1,500 to almost $2,000. If you're doing a 40 by 80 tent, if you're doing something like the barn at Willowbrook, which is a huge space, those are realistic prices. Where you can save money. Let's move on to saving money, because everybody loves to save money. So let me pull that up. How to save. You do need to involve the lighting company as early as possible. I am getting calls every day right now. I got an event coming up in 2 weeks, and I need a lighting company, and I need bistro lighting. Okay, if I'm out of inventory, I'm still going to want to do that job for you. So now I have to rent that equipment, or I have to buy that equipment, and then there's like an additional percentage that goes on that. Get the lighting company involved. If I have to pay higher labor costs because there's a short turnaround, I don't want to do that to a client, but I have to make a profit. So get involved right away. If the lighting company can work out ideas with you, if you haven't already selected your venue, they can go through the types of things that we're talking about in this video, about venues that have hard in times and hard out times, and venues that have layouts that are friendly for bistro lighting. Those are things that can save you a lot of money very early on. Make sure you budget for your lighting. All right. Match that location with the lighting and design your event. You have a picture in your head. Help us get to a place where we can map it out, like I showed you in that map where we designed everything for this client, and make it picture perfect. And that way you can understand where your costs are going. And one of the big things we can save you money on is that if I go out and I do a bistro lighting job and say it's like $1,500, and you say, Paul, I really want to have uplighting too. I really want that uplighting, but you said that you're uplighting, 60 uplights, which is a lot of uplights, but it looks great. Go look at the pictures we did at the barn at Willowbrook. Go look at, what we do in some of these tents. We're not a DJ company. We don't throw down 12 lights and then charge you and say you have uplighting. We make sure that uplighting is something that accentuates the space and works with the bistro lighting. Where you might say, normally I might say, well, that's $1,800. With the bistro lighting, I might cut that number in half because it's already on the truck. We're already making a profit. We already have the labor on site. It doesn't take but 20 minutes to have a technician go and change the lights to a particular color and drop them all down. So I don't need to go and hire a secondary crew to come out and do that. So, where you might normally spend $1,800 or $2,000 or whatever, I might cut that in half because you've already got the bistro package and save you some big dollars. Who doesn't want to save $800 to $1,000? We normally do pen spot lighting. We talked about the pen spot lighting that goes on these guys. If you already got your bistro lights up there, you want your flower arrangements lit, magnetic pen spot, battery operated, good for 6 to 7 hours. Hit those flowers. All right. You might get a price out of us for a couple $100 on that. If my guy's already up there attaching the bistro lights, you think you can't just snap on a pen spot? So those are great ways to save money. So I'd like to ask, if anyone on has any questions about the bistro lighting, this is the time to go ahead and get them covered before I step off. And if not, I hope to hear from you. I hope this has been informational. I hope it has been of value. And you're free to email me at paul@eventlightsusa.com. We also recommend that you visit our website, eventlightsusa.com. If you ever need to reach me about these types of questions, give me a holler. I'm Been looking forward to it. Thank you all for checking in. And thank you for doing EventLightsUSA.com's Bistro Lights Live. Thank you. Bye-bye.